Welcome to Lukebook Money, built for Singapore. Today, an ordinary Singapore couple, on two normal salaries, who quietly retired at 45. Here's the real story. Quick favor before we start. If you're new to Tiger Brokers, just tap the link in my description below, or key in the code on your screen, when you sign up. We both earn $90, and it quietly keeps these daily videos free. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. Wei and Hui are 45, and this year they both stopped needing to work. That's about 20 years earlier than most people around them. And they were never high earners. This is the story of an ordinary Singapore couple who reached freedom by rowing in the same direction. It's a Tuesday morning. Their friends are stuck in traffic to the office. Wei and Hui sit coffee at their void deck, in no hurry. They can work if they want to. They just don't have to. When I say they retired at 45, I don't mean they lie around doing nothing. I mean their money now covers their life, so a paycheck is optional. That one word, optional, is the whole price. If you pass them at the hawker center, nothing would stand out. A modest flat, no branded everything, two very normal jobs. On paper, an utterly average couple. Here is the number that surprises people. For most of their careers, Wei earned around $5,500 a month, and Hui around $5,000. Solid, but nowhere near the top. No inheritance, no windfall, no lucky startup. That combined pay is respectable, but it is not rich. Singapore's median full-time wage is around $5,500 a month for one person. Wei and Hui were, together, an ordinary middle-income household. No lottery, no crypto jackpot, no business they quietly sold. Just two salaries, and one shared plan. So how did two ordinary salaries buy 20 extra years of freedom? Not by earning more. By deciding, very early, to point both salaries at the same target, and then never wavering. One honest note before we go on. This is a true-to-life story, not a promise, and it's education, not financial advice. Their numbers are illustrative, and their path had luck in it too. We'll be honest about all of that. But the core of their story is something money can't buy on its own, and it's the reason I wanted to tell it. Two people, quietly aligned, for 20 years. Most people hear this and think it's impossible. It isn't impossible. It's just uncommon. To understand how they got here, we have to rewind to the very beginning, back when they had almost nothing, and one quiet conversation began to reshape their whole lives. 22 years ago, Wei and Hui were both 23, fresh into their first jobs, and completely broke. Let me show you exactly how unremarkable their starting point was. Wei was a junior engineer. Hui worked in a hospital's back office. Their first pay packets were nothing to write home about, and after rent, food, and helping their parents, there wasn't much left over. They met at a friend's birthday, both nursing the same cheap drink because neither wanted to spend more. Maybe that says something. From the very start, they were oddly relaxed about not keeping up with anyone. 23, newly in love, and honestly, date broke. Not a promising start to a wealth story. There was no rich uncle, no property handed down, no trust fund waiting. Whatever they were going to build, they would have to build from two paychecks and nothing else. Their combined net worth on day one was, more or less, exactly zero. Even their wedding was deliberately small. No hotel ballroom, no crushing debt to start married life with. A simple lunch with the people who mattered. They'd rather begin their marriage with savings than with a bill. And they had both watched something up close. Their own parents worked hard into their late 60s, tired, with very little to show for a lifetime of effort. That image stayed with them. They quietly wanted a different ending. They weren't born frugal. They chose it, with their eyes open, because they'd seen the alternative. Now, most couples on their income do a very normal thing. They slowly spend a little more each year. A nicer flat, a car, a bigger wedding, then the upgrades never really stop. It feels like progress. And for 2 people, that creep is doubled. 2 sets of wants, 2 phones, 2 social circles to keep up with. It's the most natural thing in the world, and it quietly eats every pay rise you will ever get. They didn't want more than everyone else. They just wanted out, earlier. That's a different kind of want. So one evening, not long after they married, they asked themselves a simple question. What if we treated our 2 salaries as one income and one savings machine, instead of 2 people spending separately? Their friends went the other way, and you could watch it happen. Bigger flats, then condos, then continental cars, then the stress of paying for all of it. On the outside, thriving. Underneath, running just to stand still. That one question sounds small. But the answer they landed on would quietly redirect the next 20 years. Let me show you the single decision that did almost all of the heavy lifting. The decision was this. They would run the entire household on Hui's take-home pay, and save and invest every single dollar of Wei's. Not 10%. Not 20%. A whole salary. After CPF, we brought home around $4,000 a month. That became their entire budget for rent, food, transport, everything. Wei's take-home, another $4,000 or so, they simply never touched for spending. Think about what that means. They were saving roughly half of everything the household earned. Most people save 5 or 10% and already feel the pinch. Wei and Hui saved 50%, on purpose, month after month. Most people save whatever is left at month's end. They flipped it completely, save first, then live on the rest. And the trick wasn't budgeting harder every month. It was structural. By living on one income from the very start, the second income was never in their lifestyle to begin with. You can't miss what you never spent. 50% saved. Not for one proud month. For 20 straight years. That's the whole trick. So what did life on one salary actually look like? Nothing miserable. A paid-for roof, home-cooked meals most nights, public transport, and a real but modest budget for fun. Ordinary comfort, just sized to one paycheck. Before investing a cent, they did the unglamorous thing first, an emergency fund, around 6 months of expenses in cash. So a broken appliance or a lost job could never force them to sell at the worst possible time. Then they set up a simple system. 2 accounts. One for spending, fed by Hui's salary. One for investing, fed by Wei's. The money was separated before either of them could blur the line. Structure did the discipline for them. And here's the quiet magic. Every time either of them got a raise or a bonus, it didn't upgrade their life. It went straight into the investing account. Their spending stayed flat for years while their savings steadily climbed. They had one firm rule for windfalls, too. Any bonus, any tax refund, any red packet money, at least 90% of it was invested before it could be spent. Windfalls are where most people's wealth quietly leaks away. Now, was any of this painful? Honestly, less than you'd think. They still ate out, still traveled, still had a life. They simply calibrated that life to one salary, and let the other one work silently in the background. Let me be fair. Living on one salary is far easier when 2 people earn decently. A single parent, or a couple where one loses a job, cannot simply flip this switch. Their margin is real, and I won't pretend otherwise. But the principle underneath still travels to almost everyone, and it deserves its own moment, because it is the single most powerful number in your whole financial life. Here is a truth almost nobody tells you plainly. Your savings rate, more than your income, and more than your investment returns, decides how many years until you are free. It is the master dial. Income is how fast you earn. Your savings rate is how fast you actually get free. They are not the same speed. Roughly, save 10% and you might work 40 more years. Save a quarter, it drops toward 30. Save half, like they did, and it collapses to around 17. That's not a small difference. That's a different life. The reason is beautiful once you see it. A high savings rate does two things at once. It shrinks the life you need to fund, and it grows the pile that funds it. Both blades of the scissors cut toward freedom. Compare that to a typical two-income couple. Two salaries usually means two lifestyles, a bigger place, two cars, nicer holidays, and somehow still nothing left at month's end. Two incomes can trap you just as easily as free you. So every single month, around $4,000 left Wei's salary and went to work. Over a year, that's close to $50,000 invested, without them lifting a finger after the setup. Once you save a whole salary, freedom stops being a vague fantasy. It becomes a countdown with a date on it. But before we follow that money into the market, we have to talk about the biggest expense of their entire lives, the one most couples quietly get wrong. Their home. For most Singaporeans, the home is the single biggest financial decision they will ever make. It can be a foundation, or it can be a 30-year anchor. Wei and Hui were very deliberate about which one theirs would be. When they went flat hunting, the bank was happy to lend them far more than they took. They could have stretched for a big condo, or a flat in a prime district. On paper, they easily qualified. The bank said yes to much more. They quietly said no. That single no shaped everything after it. They even walked through a condo show flat once. The marble, the pool, the gym downstairs. It was tempting. But they did the math standing right there, looked at each other, and quietly walked out. Instead, they bought a modest 4-room HDB flat in a heartland town, well within what one salary could comfortably service. Around $500,000, not the most they could afford, but the most they were willing to owe. $500,000, not a whole million. That gap they refused to borrow quietly became their freedom fund. As first-time buyers, they made full use of the housing grants available to them, which trimmed the price further. They started their biggest purchase with the deck already tilted in their favor, and they knew it. They refused to blow the budget on renovation. Many couples spend $80,000 or $100,000 making a flat look like a magazine. Wei and Hui spent a fraction. A home is for living in, not photographing. There was one more expense they said no to, and in Singapore, it might be the most expensive no of all. The car. In Singapore, a car is not just a car. Between the certificate of entitlement, the price, petrol, parking, and insurance, running one can easily cost around $2,000 a month, all in. That is a second rent. In Singapore, a car isn't really transport. It's a second rent that you happen to drive. So they simply didn't. For 20 years, they took the train and the bus, and grabbed a taxi when they truly needed one. That single choice, invested instead, quietly added hundreds of thousands of dollars to their freedom over 2 decades. Picture it plainly. $2,000 a month, invested for 20 years instead of driven away, grows to well over $800,000. In Singapore, the car you don't buy can quietly buy your retirement. This is where many couples quietly lose. You buy a flat, it appreciates, so you upgrade to a condo. Bigger loan, bigger interest, decades of feeding it. It feels like winning. Often it's just a treadmill. A home loan is sneaky, because the interest hides in plain sight. On a big 30-year loan, you can end up paying hundreds of thousands in interest alone, on top of the price. The bank's cut can rival the flat itself. Picture two versions of the same couple. One buys the big condo and carries a large loan for 30 years. The other buys the modest flat and clears it in 12. Same income, wildly different freedom. Once they had the flat, they didn't let the loan drift for 30 years. They threw extra at it whenever they could, using cash and their Cpf, aiming to be completely debt-free while they were still in their 30s. They watched one Singapore quirk, too. When you use Cpf for your flat, you owe it back to yourself, with interest. They knew the flat wasn't truly free until that was settled, and they planned for it. And by around 35, roughly 12 years in, the flat was fully theirs. No more mortgage. The single biggest monthly cost of an ordinary life, simply gone. Completely debt-free by 35. Read that again, then picture your own life with no mortgage hanging over it. When your home is paid off, something powerful happens. The money that used to vanish into the loan each month is suddenly free. For them, that was well over $1,000 a month, redirected straight into investing. Now, some of you are thinking, paying off a cheap loan early isn't optimal, you could earn more by investing that money instead. On a spreadsheet, sometimes that's true. But this choice was never only about the maths. Clearing the loan gave them a certain, risk-free saving equal to the interest they would otherwise have paid, and something a spreadsheet can't price. The decom of owning your roof outright. And that let them invest the rest more boldly. One more thing, because it matters. They never treated the flat itself as their retirement plan. It was the roof over their heads, not the nest egg. The nest egg was being built somewhere else entirely. So, with half their income saved and their biggest expense killed off, where did all that money actually go? Let's open up the engine. This is the part people expect to be complicated. It wasn't. Wei and Hui's investing was so boring it would put a finance guru to sleep. And boring, it turns out, is exactly what works. The first thing they did was remove themselves from the decision. On payday, money moved automatically into their investments, before they could see it, feel it, or be tempted to spend it. No willpower required. Set it, forget it, feed it. That was, honestly, the entire monthly routine. This sounds trivial, but it's the whole game. Willpower fails, moods change, tempting purchases appear out of nowhere. A standing instruction doesn't care how you feel on the 15th of the month. It just quietly executes. By buying the same amount every month, they were quietly doing dollar cost averaging. When prices were low, their fixed sum bought more units. When high, less. They never had to guess the timing. What did they actually buy? Mostly low-cost index funds, the kind that quietly own hundreds of companies at once. A global index fund, and a Straits Times Index ETF for local exposure. No stock picking, no drama. The beauty of an index fund is you stop trying to be clever. You're not betting on one company, you're buying the whole market, at rock-bottom fees. Most professionals can't beat it over 20 years, so they didn't try. They never once picked a winning stock. They just quietly owned all of them, and let the market do its thing. And by owning the whole market, they were never one bad company away from disaster. If one firm collapsed, it was a rounding error inside hundreds of others. Diversification is the closest thing investing has to a free lunch. Fees matter more than people realize, too. A fund charging 2% a year, versus one charging almost nothing, can quietly eat a third of your final pot over decades. They chose cheap, on purpose, every single time. Fees are the termites of wealth. Small, silent, and if you ignore them long enough, they eat the whole house. Alongside the index funds, they held a handful of solid dividend-paying stocks. Local banks, a couple of trusts. Not exciting, but every quarter, these paid them real cash, simply for owning them. Every quarter, money simply arrived that they hadn't worked a single hour for. That is what owning things feels like. A realistic yield on quality Singapore dividend stocks is around 4 to 5% a year. Nice, but not magic, and dividends can be cut in a bad year. They treated it as a welcome bonus, never a promise. Here is the rule they never broke. Every dividend, every payout, went straight back in. They didn't spend a cent of the investment income for 2 full decades. Reinvesting is what turns a snowball into an avalanche. Compounding is quiet for years and years. And then, almost all at once, it gets very loud. Their whole portfolio, if you drew it as a pie, was almost embarrassingly plain. Mostly global stocks for growth, a slice of Singapore shares and trusts for income, and a cushion of bonds and Singapore savings bonds for stability. But before any of that growth mattered, They did something most eager investors skip. They protected the downside first. Because a single disaster, a serious illness, an accident, can wipe out 20 years of patient saving in one blow. A plan with no protection isn't a plan, it's a hope. So they built the floor before the tower. They kept it simple and cheap. Plain term insurance, covering death and total permanent disability, enough to clear the flat and protect each other. No expensive bundled policies mixing insurance with investing. Insure for protection, invest separately. And they made sure their health coverage was sorted, so a big hospital bill could never force them to sell investments in a panic. In Singapore, your MediSave and a hospital plan are quietly part of any real freedom plan. They also use a quieter Singapore tool for the tax-savvy. The supplementary retirement scheme lets you set aside money each year, lower your income tax today, and invest it for later. A small, legal tailwind they didn't ignore. And underneath every layer we've talked about sat something most Singaporeans forget to even count. Their CPF, quietly compounding in the background. Money in the CPF special account earns around 4% a year, guaranteed, backed by the government. In an uncertain world, a guaranteed 4% on a growing balance is genuinely precious, and rarer than it sounds. A guaranteed 4%, backed by the government, is a gift far too many Singaporeans quietly ignore. Because both of them worked steadily and contributed for over 20 years, they built two separate CPF pots. Two people, two sets of contributions, two floors, growing side by side, month after month. And CPF has a feature that quietly solves the scariest problem in retirement. It's called Cpf Life, and it pays you a monthly income for as long as you live. You cannot outlive it. That's rarer than it sounds. The scariest question in retirement is, what if I run out? Cpf Life quietly answers it. You can't. By working toward the higher retirement sums, the two of them are on track for a combined Cpf Life income of very roughly $3,000 a month from their mid-60s, for life, no matter what the stock market ever does. So think of their money in two layers. Cpf Life is the floor, the income that will always show up. Their investments sit on top, and that's the part giving them freedom right now, at 45, long before CPF even begins. There's a real CPF trade-off I won't gloss over. That money is locked until your 50s and 60s. Safe, yes, but not cash you can touch at 45. That's exactly why the investment layer mattered so much. Now let's put every piece together and watch what 20 years of this quietly does. This is where it stops being about discipline, and starts being about time. Let's assume their investments grew at around 6% a year on average. That's deliberately below the long-run global average, chosen on purpose, so we don't fool ourselves with rosy numbers. In year 1, saving $4,000 a month, they put in around $50,000 and earned maybe a couple of thousand in growth. Honestly, underwhelming. This is exactly the stage where most people quietly give up. Years 2 through 8 are the hardest, because almost nothing dramatic happens. The pile grows steadily but slowly. No fireworks. Just two people, quietly, doing the very same thing every single month. Then, somewhere around year 10, something shifts. The growth on their existing money starts to rival what they're adding. Some years, their investments earn more than their salaries save. The snowball is now rolling on its own. Year 1 is boring enough to make you quit. Year 20 is quietly life-changing. Same habit. Different universe. Watch the shape of it. Slow, 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 and then steep. That upward curve, at the far right, is the entire reason they could stop at 45 and not 65. There is no genius hidden in that curve. Only patience, repeated for 240 months in a row. One honest adjustment, though. Over 20 years, inflation nibbles at everything. $1 today buys less tomorrow. So when we say 2 million, understand it buys a little less than 2 million feels like now. Still, by 45, after 20 years of a paid-off flat and a saved salary compounding, their investment pot had grown to somewhere around $2 million. From 2 very ordinary paychecks. And here's the part that still amazes them. Of that 2 million, only around 1 million was money they actually saved. The other million was growth, the market's contribution, earned quietly while they slept. Half of their 2 million, they never actually earned at a job. The market simply handed it to them, for waiting. And remember, that 2 million sits on top of a fully paid off flat and 2 CPF accounts marching steadily towards CPF life. The 2 million was the liquid, spendable freedom. The rest was their solid foundation. So what does 2 million actually buy you? This is where a famous, and often misused, rule of thumb comes in. Let me explain it carefully, because it is very easy to get wrong. The rough idea is this. If you save about 25 times your yearly spending, you can withdraw around 4% of it a year, and the pile has a good chance of lasting for decades. It's a guideline, not a guarantee. And the honest truth about timing is simple. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best is today. Wei and Hui live on around $50,000 a year. 25 times that is $1.25 million. Their 2 million comfortably clears that bar, which is exactly why they could finally call themselves free. But be honest about that 4%. It came from one country's history. Markets can crash the year you retire, and inflation bites. Sensible people today often use a gentler 3 or 3.5%. There's a specific danger, too, with a clumsy named sequence of returns risk. If a big crash hits in your first year of retirement, selling into it can cripple the whole plan. The early years matter far more than the average. So the smart move, the one they made, is a buffer. They didn't retire the moment they hit the minimum. They worked a couple of extra years, so their real withdrawal rate sits comfortably below 4%. And they held a separate pot in mind for the bridge, the years from 45 to 65, before CPF life kicks in. A cash and bond cushion for the lean early years, so a bad market never forces their hand. So that's the engine, and honestly, a disciplined single person could build one too. But there's a reason this couple pulled it off when so many individuals stall. And it's the real heart of the story. Everything I've described so far, the savings rate, the flat, the index funds, a single determined person could do alone. What Wei and Hui had was something you cannot buy, and most couples never build. Alignment. 2 aligned savers aren't just twice as strong as one. They are exponentially stronger. Because the biggest threat to any financial plan isn't the market. It's the person sitting across the dinner table, quietly pulling the other way. The market was never their biggest risk. Disagreement at the dinner table was. And they simply never had it. In most households, money is a quiet tug-of-war. One saves, the other spends. One wants security, the other wants to enjoy life now. Every month, they cancel each other out, and the plan never really moves. Wei and Hui simply never had that fight. They both wanted the same thing, freedom, and said so out loud, early. So instead of cancelling out, every effort added up. 2 people rowing the same boat, the same way. There was also no competition between them, and this is subtle. Neither felt the need to outspend the other, or to prove something with a watch or a bag. When your partner isn't keeping score, you quietly stop keeping score too. Together, they found it far easier to ignore everyone else. When friends upgraded cars or flew business class, they could look at each other and shrug. 2 people saying no is much easier than one saying no alone. They kept each other honest, gently. When one drifted toward an impulse buy, the other was a soft, knowing reminder of the plan. Not a nag, a partner. And when one felt discouraged, the other carried the belief. No secret accounts. No money fights. Just one quiet team, keeping the same score, on the same side. Once a month, over dinner, they'd spend 20 minutes looking at their numbers together. Not stressful, almost a ritual. Watching the pile grow became something they enjoyed as a team, Like a shared game, they were slowly winning. Because they defined a goal together, it stayed vivid. Not a vague be rich, but a clear picture, free by 45, with time for each other and the things they loved. A shared picture pulls two people forward. People always ask how a couple should actually organize the money itself. Separate accounts? Joint? Who controls what? Wei and Hui found a simple answer. They treated the household as one team with one scoreboard. Most money flowed into shared goals, with each of them keeping a small, no questions asked personal allowance. Transparent where it mattered, private where it kept the peace. They also divided the labor. Hui, who found it interesting, managed the investing and the monthly numbers. We kept them honest on the big decisions. One person drove, but both agreed the destination. That's the balance to aim for. And when we started earning a bit more than Hui, it never became a source of power or resentment. It was simply the household's money, aimed at the household's goal. Whose name was on the bigger paycheck genuinely didn't matter. They were also honest with each other about the biggest variable of all, children, and what that would mean for the plan. Whatever they decided it together, eyes open, rather than letting it just happen and hoping. There's a resilience in two that one simply doesn't have. When Wei was retrenched for a few months during a downturn, they didn't panic. Hui's income held the fort, the plan bent but never broke. A single earner has no such backstop. Investing is emotional, and fear is contagious. When markets crashed and one of them got scared, the other talked them off the ledge. Neither ever sold in a panic, because they never panic at the same time. During one big market drop, their 2 million in progress briefly fell by a third on screen. Terrifying, alone. But together they already agreed the rule: we do not sell, we keep buying. And the recovery, as it always had before, eventually came. Their crash rule was one sentence: agreed while calm, and it saved them from every panic that came later. So alignment compounds too, not just money. Every year on the same page, trust deepened and decisions got easier. A good partnership gets more efficient with time, exactly like an index fund. This, more than any spreadsheet, is why I wanted to tell their story. The maths is simple and public, anyone can copy it. The alignment is the rare, precious part, and it's the one thing money can't manufacture. Alignment is the one edge that money genuinely cannot buy. And it happens to be the one that matters most. Picture the difference plainly. A single high earner, saving alone, might reach this too, with more income and more discipline. But two ordinary earners, aligned, quietly outbuilt many couples who earn far more and pulled apart. So if alignment is the real secret, the obvious question is, how on earth do you build it? Especially if you and your partner aren't there yet. First, an honest word. Being disaligned for 20 years is genuinely hard. People change, life throws curveballs, and plenty of loving couples simply want different things with money. That's not a failure. It's just human. It starts with one honest conversation, and not about budgets. About the life you both actually want. What is money even for, to each of you? You'd be surprised how rarely couples ever ask that out loud. Start with the dream you actually share, not the spreadsheet. The numbers follow the direction, never the other way around. The goal isn't to convert the other into a hardcore saver. It's to find a shared version of the good life you both genuinely want, and aim your money at that, together. Alignment is agreement, not surrender. And you don't need to be perfectly aligned overnight. Start small. One shared goal, one automatic transfer you both agree on, one short monthly money chat. Alignment is a habit you build, not a personality you're born with. But I have to be straight with you. If your partner fundamentally isn't willing, no spreadsheet will fix that. That misalignment is the first, and most important, work, long before index funds or Cpf. Sometimes it's the only work that matters. If your partner isn't in yet, that conversation is your first, and most important, investment. Win the heart before the wallet. And notice what alignment was really about. It was never two people obsessed with money. It was two people who agreed that time, and freedom, and each other, were worth more than stuff. The money was only ever the tool. Which brings us, finally, to the most important question of all. They're 45, and free. So what do they actually do with that? What does retired at 45 truly mean? The word retired is misleading, so let me correct it right now. Wei and Hui didn't stop living. They stopped needing a job. Those are completely different things, and the difference is everything. They don't spend their days doing nothing. Wei still takes on engineering projects he finds interesting, a few months a year, because he wants to. Hui volunteers and runs a small thing she loves. None of it is required. They didn't stop working. They stopped needing to. That, right there, is the whole difference. That's the real price, and it has a name, optionality. Every morning, they choose. Work or don't. Walk away from a bad boss without fear. Money in the bank turns a paycheck from a leash into a choice. There's a blunt phrase for this, I'll keep polite: freedom money. It's the quiet confidence that if work turned toxic tomorrow, you could simply stop, and be fine. Most people never feel that even once. But if you ask them what they treasure most, it isn't the number in the account. It's the mornings. Slow breakfasts. Being there for their parents as they age. Time, together, while they're still young enough to truly enjoy it. Here's the truth underneath this whole story. You can't save money without spending time to earn it. What they really did was trade a slice of their 30s to buy back the whole of their 40s and 50s. And I want to correct an image you might have of them. They were not miserable misers, counting single dollars. They traveled, they ate well, they enjoyed their friends. They just spent deliberately on what they valued. You can get this wrong in the other direction, too. Saving so hard you never leave, hoarding for a future promise to no one. That's not freedom, it's a different kind of prison. Balance is the whole art. The goal was never to die the richest couple in the columbarium. It was to live free, and enjoy the road there too. Now, I've told you an inspiring story, and I believe every principle in it. But it would be dishonest to end without being very clear about the parts that made it easier for them, and might be harder for you. First, and most obviously, they had two stable, decent incomes. That is a genuine advantage a single person, or a couple where one can't work, simply doesn't have. Two engines pull harder than one. I won't pretend otherwise. Second, and this is delicate, they were deliberate about the cost of children. One child, or none, hugely shaped their savings rate. Kids are a joy, and genuinely expensive. Your maths will differ, and that's completely valid. Third, the markets were kind over their particular 20 years. They invested through a long stretch of growth. Had they retired into a decade-long slump, this story would read very differently. Nobody controls which era they invest in. And yes, part of their result was simply good timing they didn't control. Honest people admit the luck in their story. Fourth, the big one. You cannot save a slice of an income you don't have. If you're stretched thin just covering rent and food, none of this is your fault. Some gaps are about the system, not effort. Fifth, staying this disciplined and this aligned for 2 full decades is genuinely rare and hard. Most people who start will drift. Life interrupts. So if you try and stumble, you're not failing, you're normal. You just start again. And a practical one for the early retired. Without an employer's coverage, healthcare becomes your own responsibility. They kept a solid hospital plan and a healthy MediSave buffer, because in early retirement, a single big illness is the real risk to manage. Here's the most important thing I'll say all episode. Not everyone can retire at 45, and that is completely okay. This isn't a test you pass or fail. It's a direction you lean toward, from wherever you start. Freedom at 45, or 55, or 60. Sooner than the default is still a genuine win. Any pace beats no plan. Even a fraction of what they did changes your life. Leave your savings rate a little, buy a home you can truly afford, invest automatically, and you might stop at 58 instead of 67. That's 9 extra years of your one life. Step back, and you'll see this was never really a story about $2 million. It was a story about two people who decided, together, that freedom was worth more than the appearance of success. The money just followed the decision. So if you're half of a couple watching this, and something in you stirred just now, let me leave you with where to actually begin. Not next year. This week. Step 1 costs nothing. Tonight, or this weekend, have the conversation. Not about budgets, but about the life you both actually want, and by when. You can't row the same way until you've agreed where the shore is. Step 2, find your savings rate. Add up what the two of you earn, and what you actually save, as a percentage. That single number is your true speed toward freedom. You can't improve what you won't look at. You don't need their exact income. You need their direction, and their patience. Both of those are free. Step 3, automate one transfer. Even a few $100s, move automatically on payday into a low-cost index fund, before you can spend it. Small is completely fine. Started is everything. You can always raise it later. Step 4, when the time comes for the biggest decision, the home, buy less than the bank offers you. Your future freedom lives in that gap, between what you could borrow and what you choose to. Guard that gap fiercely. And step 5, the hardest. Then wait. Let it be boring. Let compounding do the slow work while you live your life. The couple who does ordinary things relentlessly for 20 years beats the clever one who quits in year 3. Ordinary actions, repeated relentlessly, beat brilliant ideas abandoned early. Almost every single time. That's the entire playbook, and notice there is nothing secret in it. Live on less than you earn, ideally on one income. Kill your biggest debt. Invest the rest simply and automatically. And above all, do it together, pointed the same way. And once more, because it truly matters, this is a story to learn principles from, not financial advice for your exact situation. Their numbers were illustrative, and your life is your own. Take the direction, not the decimal points. Let me leave you with one last picture, back where we began. It's that same Tuesday morning. Wei and Hui, 45, copy in hand, the whole day theirs, and decades of it still ahead. No alarm tomorrow, unless they choose to set one. They'll be the first to tell you they were nothing special. No genius, no fortune, no secret. Just two ordinary people who made one quiet, radical choice, to want the same thing, and to keep wanting it for 20 years. And that's the whole secret, if there even is one. It was never about how much they earned, or how fast they moved. It was about direction. Two people, however ordinary, pointed the same way, for long enough, arrived somewhere extraordinary. So whatever you earn, and whoever you're rowing with, the invitation is the same. Pick a direction together. Start small this week. And let time, that patient, powerful friend, quietly do the rest. 20 years of freedom can begin tonight, with a single conversation over dinner. So please, go and have it. If this gave you something worth talking about tonight, then that conversation is the most valuable thing you take from this video. Because that's where every version of this story begins. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If this made building wealth in Singapore a little clearer, give it a like and subscribe to Lukebook so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.